Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and I am here today bringing you my first impressions of the Battlefield 1 single-player campaign. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the very first mission or war story known as Through Mud and Blood. This is a tank-focused mission that has you taking on the role of British soldier and tank driver Edwards, actually formerly a chauffeur, now driving tanks in the British military. He is the newest member of the crew that operates the Mark V tank called Big Bess. Let's start by talking about the audiovisual masterpiece that Battlefield 1 absolutely is. DICE has once again outdone themselves. They have managed to step up everything they did in Battlefield 4 and blow us away. This is one of the most beautiful and stunning games I have ever played. There's a very good reason I decided to pick this up on PC. And it's not just the player models and the animations and the vehicle models and the environments. Those are all obviously incredible. It's the level of detail put into each of those things, the effects, the elements. In the instance of Through Mud and Blood, the mud itself is a huge part of this mission. They made sure that they really highlighted the focus that mud had and the fact that in many ways it was just as big of an enemy for these heavy World War I tanks as a massive field gunner rocket was. It is something you're gonna have to deal with throughout the course of this mission, and it is incredibly well visually represented. It will gather on the treads of Black Bess. You'll watch it drip off as the treads move forward. You'll track your way through it. You'll even pick up enemy weapons that have fallen in the trench that will be caked in mud. It put the biggest smile on my face. DICE has, in my opinion, always understood just how much the small things matter, and they've taken that to the next level inside of Battlefield 1. I can't wait to see what it's like when I head out into the desert with Lawrence of Arabia. And all in all, guys, this mission was meticulously well designed. There's a ton of diversity, there's a ton of variety. The pacing from start to finish, all 5 chapters of Mud and Blood, was outstanding. It took me about an hour and 45 minutes to beat it on normal difficulty, and that time absolutely flew by. I was constantly enjoying myself. I was constantly dealing with emotion and stress, and I was constantly being introduced to new freedoms, new elements of player choice. This is a far cry from the experience that we had in Battlefield 3 and in Battlefield 4, and in many ways, it's more akin to the campaign experience that was on offer back in the days of Bad Company. DICE has really embraced that sense of scale and that sense of player freedom, albeit in a somewhat linear experience still. You're obviously always pushing from point A to point B, and in the case of Through Mud and Blood, we're actually physically capturing flags just like we would in Conquest, moving from one point to the next, pushing back the enemy defenses. And while it may seem like I'm on one specific track here, I do have a lot of choice in which paths I can take, in the ways in which I can engage enemies, and, you know, essentially the direction in which I can drive my tank. There is actually a reasonable sense of player freedom, and it gives a really great sense of scale, one that couldn't exist in a linear or a, you know, sort of on-rails tank experience. Now, I mentioned the idea of actually capturing flags. Again, this was something that DICE really did with Bad Company. They embraced the things that made Battlefield Battlefield, and they found a way to incorporate them into the single-player campaign. They've done that once again in Battlefield 1. But this time, they've used cutscenes and cinematics to make some of those elements feel more natural, and I really like the way they delivered the cinematics. You're seeing a prime example of that right now. This is the very first time that Black Bess, as I was piloting it as a player, has taken critical damage. So this actually triggers a cutscene in which we get some character development, some story development, in which Edwards acquires the ability to get out and actually repair the tank, just like I would in a good old match of Conquest and Battlefield multiplayer. It takes away some of the corniness of actually getting out and turning a wrench in midair to repair a vehicle, and it just, you know, makes it feel like a good part of the campaign. I actually really enjoyed it. Now, as I mentioned, these cutscenes are really well integrated. Like I said, this cutscene triggers when the tank first takes critical damage. And even if it is preordained that eventually my tank is going to get stuck in mud, they make it feel natural enough so that when a cutscene does trigger, it doesn't feel like it was just shoved into your face, but rather it was simply the continuation of the story, the adventure, and, well, I guess you could call it the adventure, basically the journey that you and the members of your tank crew were on. It feels really natural, and it feels really well presented because of that. This gives This mission in particular, an exceptional level of gameplay and cinematic value. There's just the perfect combination of the two, the likes of which very few games have been able to do successfully. Honestly, if the other war stories are as well composed and as well presented and offer such gameplay variety in the way that Through Mud and Blood does, this is shaping up to be one of the greatest Battlefield single-player campaigns we have ever played. On par, if not better, than what was in the offer for Bad Company. I'm really impressed with DICE on this. I loved this campaign, and if it wasn't for the fact that I only have 10 hours in my Origin Access trial, I'd play the entire frickin' campaign in the next 2 days in one sitting. That's really how good this is, guys. Now, I talked about diversity, you know, and there being a lot of variety throughout the course of this mission. And you're going to notice that as we transition from gameplay clip to gameplay clip here, we're not just in a tank. We're not just in one type of environment. We're out of the tank, we're on foot, we're dealing with the forest, we're dealing with more open area trench environments. You know, there's, again, a lot of sandbox, a lot of player choice elements baked into this single player experience. It's not just on rails, you're not just in a tank the whole time. That variety gives the game a really great sense of pacing. And I think that's a big part of why I found it so enjoyable from beginning to end. If I had one complaint, it's that the normal difficulty is way too easy. I didn't really find any actual gameplay challenge or threat. While I enjoyed the presentation, I enjoyed the act of going from start to finish, I would have just liked a little bit more challenge throughout the course of that. I'll definitely be playing the remainder of the campaign on the hard difficulty, but again, it would have been nice to see DICE make sure that the normal difficulty offered some level of challenge. It could be simply because of the way that they've aimed it at certain players, but all in all, I would say if you play first-person shooters, go with the hard difficulty right from the get-go. Now, there's going to be a lot more to be said about Battlefield 1's single-player campaign. I'm obviously very much looking forward to the remainder of the war stories, but I'm probably going to spend the rest of my time with my 10-hour Origin Access trial checking out the game's multiplayer. Once Battlefield 1 releases for real, I'll bring you guys my full impressions and possibly a review of the entire single-player campaign. All you have to say is Through Mud and Blood was really, really impressive, and I'm genuinely looking forward to experiencing more of BF1 single-player. If you guys have any other questions for me, any other concerns, things you'd like to hear me answer, feel free to throw them down in the comment section below. If you yourself have been checking out Through Mud and Blood in EA or Origin Access, let me know what you thought of it. Were you as impressed as I was? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.